Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is even though we're sitting up here and wearing some ties, this is actually an informal, informational neighborhood meeting regarding the proposed Tookany Creek flood remediation project, which I always refer to as the proposed Baderwood Basin project. And I think we're going to start, if everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to start with just a couple of introductions so everybody knows who everybody is. My name is John Spiegelman. I'm the Commissioner of Ward 11 of Abington Township, which is right here. Welcome. With me is Ben Sanchez, Commissioner of Ward 7, Tom Farron, Commissioner of Ward 12. We also have Township Manager Michael Lefevre, Township Engineer Mike Powers. Our guests from the Army Corps of Engineers from the Planning Division, we have Scott Sanderson, who's Project Manager, and Chief of Project Development, Eric Rourke. Do you guys want to just wave or something? You'll be hearing from them shortly. We also have from the Army Corps of Engineers Media Relations Division, Steve Rochette, Public Affairs Officer. Steve's right here. In addition, joining us tonight, we have District Director Anthony Luker from Congressman Brendan Boyle's office. And we have a new member of State Representative Madeline Dean's staff. Do you want to introduce yourself? Kate Collins. So welcome. I'm going to start with a couple of opening comments and then just explain how our meeting's going to go. Actually, I'll explain how things are going to go first. First, we're going to see a presentation from our guests from the Army Corps of Engineers, kind of explaining what this proposed project is and the feasibility study they did. In fact, also explaining what a feasibility study is. And then we're going to have comments and questions from everyone here. We'll have people come up one at a time and state your name and address when you get to the microphone, and you can make your comments. Normally during township meetings, we adhere to a 3-minute limit on comments. We're going to try not to be so formal because I know there are going to be folks with a lot of stuff to say. We're going to try to, if we can just sort of informally self-regulate and keep the comments to a reasonable length. And I'll also ask since I think there are probably a lot of people who are going to have the same views, perspective, experience. If someone gets up and kind of explains their own take, their own experience, and they go into a lot of detail, if what you're going to say, if you follow that person and what you're going to say is effectively the same thing, absolutely come up and we'll make sure that you are on record as having been here and having stated position. Of course, if you have questions, ask them. But if you can avoid repetition, because we have a big crowd tonight, I don't think anyone wants to be here all night. So before we start, I'm actually glad we started with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, because I kind of wanted us to start on a note of common cause, of solidarity, because most of us here, with the exception of our guests, we're all neighbors. We're all Abington Township residents. Most of the folks here, not all, but I know many of the folks here live in Baderwood, in different parts of Baderwood. And there are going to be folks here with different viewpoints on this proposal. And so I just want to make sure that whatever your views, whatever your personal experience, even if to some extent you've been down this road before talking about basins, if we could all just remember that we are all in this together, just no matter what our views, and to please be respectful of one another as neighbors, because yesterday, today, and tomorrow, we all live with each other. And just a couple of elements of background. I know that a lot of folks were very concerned, maybe even dismayed, to find out about this proposal and then this meeting at sort of what seems like the 11th hour, kind of out of the blue. I can tell you that we in Abington Township, the Board of Commissioners and Township staff, were also surprised by this. I know that there might be some folks who are thinking that we, the Township, are springing this on neighbors. That's actually absolutely not the case. This is something we just found out about, and we scrambled to set this meeting up, despite the fact that we're in the middle of the holiday season, because we wanted everybody to get informed and to have a voice as quickly as possible. In addition, as you probably saw in the packets you were sent and in the cover letter from Manager Lefevre, originally the end of the public comment period date on this proposal was set for December 31st, and Manager Lefevre petitioned to have that extended to January 22nd, so that people will actually have time to, at least to some extent, kind of gather their thoughts and make cogent comments. And another thing that I do want to point out is, I'm not trying to, as they say, throw anyone under the bus, but our guests tonight from the Army Corps of Engineers, they did not spring this on us. They are engineers. Their job is to do things like feasibility studies and hydrology studies and a lot of technical and scientific stuff. But as far as communicating or not communicating this ongoing study to us, that was not their responsibility. So when our guests tonight get up and speak, I want everyone to understand the last minute nature of this is absolutely not their doing. So let's please welcome them and just give them a chance to tell us what they're proposing and to say their piece respectfully. And then finally, I know that there are folks here, a lot of folks in Betawood at various points, whether it was in discussions about the idea of basins or in other matters on which the Board of Commissioners voted having nothing to do with basins. There have been times when there's been some maybe lack of goodwill, maybe even straight up lack of trust towards the township from the folks in Betawood. Folks in Betawood at times have been disappointed with the township's actions or have felt maybe unhappy with the certain outcomes. I want to make it clear that the current Board of Commissioners is a very different body from that which handled and voted on all kinds of matters in the past. And I want to assure everyone, because I really want to start out in a place of trust and common cause, that we will listen to every resident. We take residents' opinions and feelings and property values and quality of life exceptionally seriously. It is our job to serve the residents. We are here at the behest of the residents. So I want everyone to know that what you say tonight is not going to go in one ear and out the other. It's going to be taken very seriously. And finally, in case anyone isn't clear, what you're going to find out about tonight again, the feasibility study, this is not by any means a done deal. We're talking about basins that are overwhelmingly going to exist, if they exist at all, on township property. That means that this is a matter that is going to come before the Board of Commissioners to vote on. So I don't want anyone thinking that they're looking at a done deal and this is just to sort of make everybody feel like they've had a voice. You absolutely do have a voice. With that long-winded statement, I'm going to turn things over to our guests from the Army Corps of Engineers who are going to present about the feasibility study.
Great. Thank you. For folks, my name is Eric Rourke. I'm the Chief of our Project Development with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm also a resident of Abington, live right down the street. So as a member of the Abington community, it's very nice to see such a large turnout to come listen and learn about the project that we have. I'm just going to start off a little bit by explaining the feasibility study and what the study itself means, and then I'm going to pass it off to my partner, Scott Sanders, and who will go into the details. That's really why here's the details of the feasibility study. At the Army Corps of Engineers, we're a water resource agency, and we have several missions, one of which is flood risk management. Our goal is to minimize the damage that will occur in local communities due to flooding. The way this starts is we start off with a feasibility study that's meant to justify the project. To justify the project, we have to look at the economics behind it. Do we prevent more damages than it costs the project to build? We also have to look at the environmental impacts of a project. Is the project environmentally sound? Do we comply with the National Environmental Policy Act? All those factors go into a feasibility study. The level of detail that goes into a feasibility study is the level needed for us to justify the project. So we don't have full 100% designs that are ready to go to construction at this point. We've done enough study to look at the economics to say, yes, the benefits, the flood damages that we're reducing outweigh the cost it'll take to construct the project. In this particular case, we're actually looking at a benefit cost ratio of about 3. So we're preventing about 3 times as many damages than it costs to build a project. We've also completed an environmental assessment with this project that's looked at the environmental impacts to ensure that we're not degrading the environment as a result of the project. What will happen with the feasibility study is after the public comment period closes, we will respond to all the comments that we receive. We'll take those comments. It may or may not impact the results of the study, depending on what the type of the comment is, but each comment will be responded to. The report will get forwarded to our higher authority, which is North Atlantic Division, located out of New York. Once they approve the study and we finalize it, at that point we would require a cost share agreement with a non-federal sponsor to move into the next phase, which would be actual designs and eventual construction. That process is still a ways off. With the public comment period ending on the January 22nd, the final report wouldn't be for several months after that. Another agreement, designs are about a year. So this is not something that's going to happen next week. It's not happening tomorrow. We don't have construction trucks lined up, waiting to do this. So it's a long process for us to go through to get to the end result. So with that said, I'm going to pass it off to Scott, and he will go over some of the background and then the details of the study as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Sanderson. I'm the project manager here for the Tookenny Creek feasibility study with the Corps of Engineers. And I'm here tonight to just kind of present to you our findings, what we've developed in this feasibility study, kind of walk you through the project development process and some of the modeling that was done to support some of the decision making. And just to reiterate, 2 things that Eric mentioned. The feasibility study process takes us to a 30% level design. So we're, at the end of this feasibility study, we have a long way to go before actually fully designing and constructing a project. What we've done with this feasibility study is demonstrate that the benefits that could be achieved for reducing flood damages outweigh the costs of doing such a project. So without further ado, I'll go into the project background a little bit for you. So just to give you a little bit of background how this project came to be, the study authorization that allows us to look at such a problem, such a flooding problem, is Section 205 of the Flood Control Act of 1948. The study area is located in the Tookenny Creek Watershed within the Cheltenham Township, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania area. And during the study, one of the phases of the study, we have to establish what's called the without project conditions, or your existing conditions. And what I mean by that is we go out and we do an assessment of the area and try to figure out what's the problem, what damages are being caused by the flooding problem. And I have a couple bullets here just indicating that major flooding occurs any season of the year. Our hydrology and hydraulics modeling indicated flood damages vary from various levels of storm events depending on where properties are located within the floodplain. And Cheltenham Township, the area that we're studying, where we're quantifying our damages, is a very built-out area, approximately 4,088 persons per square mile. So you can see this is an area a vulnerable area to flood damage if flooding is to occur. So from when we establish the problem or the without project conditions, our existing conditions, then we come up with an objective for our study, a way to measure how the success of the study. And our overall objective was to reduce flood hazards, including risks to life safety and damages to private and public infrastructure in the Tookenny Creek watershed in Cheltenham. So I'll get through this background and then get to more detail. But some of the things we tried to avoid, some of the constraints on the study, when we design a flood risk project, a flood reduction project, we don't want to induce flooding elsewhere. We don't want to move the problem from one location to another. We want to reduce the flood risk overall in the watershed. We also want to avoid and minimize adverse impacts to habitat, in-stream and native adjacent habitat, and we don't want to do anything to degrade water quality. Also, some things we considered. I have an acronym here, HTRW. It's an acronym for hazardous, toxic, radioactive waste. Basically, we do a preliminary assessment and make sure that there's no known contaminant areas within our study area. And then during the next phase, we'll do a more detailed subsurface investigation to verify. And we identify cultural and historical features. We don't want to impact those as well, and we want to minimize and avoid changes to local land use designations and zoning. So now the formulation of our plan. We looked at a number of different alternatives for flood reduction in this study area. We looked at levees, we looked at retention basins, detention basins. We looked at a multitude of different options, and after comparing them against each other, what we came to find was that a series of dry detention basins throughout the watershed served the best kind of comprehensive flood risk management for the watershed. So on this slide here, I spell out specifically the dry detention basins versus a retention basin and why we went with a dry detention basin. And there are a couple reasons. One, a permanent pool of water reduces flood storage capacity. We felt we could get more storage capacity if we had a basin that was dry most of the year and only was wet during flood events. There are also potential public safety issues with creating a new permanent pool of water, and then potential vector issues with a permanent pool of water. So ultimately, we looked at a bunch of different combinations of these detention basins, these dry detention basins, and we formed them into different alternatives 1 through 5. And basically, we always look at a no action plan. We look at, if we did nothing, what would happen? What would the condition be 50 years from now when our project, if our project wasn't built? So we look at that, and we felt that was not a viable option. It would not check the continuing flood problems in the area. So then we probably ran over 20 different combinations of detention basins to try to figure out what combinations would reduce water surfaces throughout the Tookenny watershed the most effectively. And it came down to 4 action alternatives 2 through 5. And those are the Upper Tookenny Creek Plan, the Baderwood Creek Plan, the Comprehensive Plan, and the Rock Creek Plan. And the Upper Tookenny Creek Plan, let me go ahead a couple slides to show you. So this is a look at the study area, and if you look at the areas shaded in light blue, the areas with labels next to them, you have working from left to right on this one, and left to right on that one. You have Doe Lane, is the first basin. Then you have West Waverly Road, the Church Road Basin near Arcadia, the Limekiln Pike Basin, the Grove Park Basin. Those 5 basins represent Alternative 2, the Upper Tookonie Plan. So what we did is we looked collectively at how those work together to reduce the water surface profile in the Tookonie Creek and how that would result in reduced damages to structures downstream from those basins. So then the next plan was the Baderwood Creek Plan, where we looked at Highland West, Highland East, and Bader Road on the top portion of your figure. And we ran hydraulic modeling and looked at how that would impact water surface profiles and looked at the cost to build those basins versus the benefits achieved for reducing flood damages. Alternative 4, the comprehensive plan, actually looked at all of those 8 basins together as well as the basin along Rock Creek titled Washington Lane. And then we also looked at the Washington Lane Basin as its own plan along Rock Creek. And ultimately, we decided that the comprehensive plan, which consisted of the 9 dry detention basins, was our optimal plan. And what I mean by that is we're required to look, we look at the benefits of a project versus the cost. So we have a certain cost associated with each basin, which brought the cost of the recommended plan to $9.2 million. Then we measure our benefits. We look at, we assess what the damages are without a project, what the flood-related damages would be, and then we look at what those damages would be reduced to with a project. And that reduction in damages is our net benefit, and we use that, the new damage number that we achieve with our project, and we compare that to our cost to come up with our benefit-cost ratio. So we have to be above 1, and then the other criteria is we have to pick the project, we're required to pick the project that has the highest net reduction in damages, net benefits. And ultimately, when we compared all these different projects against each other, the comprehensive plan had the highest net benefits with a positive benefit-cost ratio, and that's why it is the selected plan. Sorry, you can't hear me?
Yeah, if you use your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, also they're taping it, so they won't be able to hear it at home if you
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. So now what I'll do is I'll just kind of walk you through this. The rest of my slides are just pictures of the different basins, close-ups of each basin. And so what I'll do, can you fast forward to, that's good. So since we'll talk specifically about the Baderwood basins. Of the 9 basins in the comprehensive plan, we have 3 along Baderwood Creek. We have Highland West along Highland Avenue here next to the park. And the theory behind these basins, the way they're designed, is we walked the watershed, and what we try to do is locate areas where there was natural drainage, natural low-lying areas where the topography would lend itself to natural ponding. Then our proposal is to build an embankment on the downstream side. So this represents the embankment, and what this serves to do is basically increase the pool size of the basin. So we have an area that has natural drainage where you have natural ponding of water, and so the embankment helps to increase that pond size. So what we've done is we've identified areas where we could have minimal excavation, where we wouldn't have to excavate to increase storage capacity. We would do minimal excavation to use material from this area to build the embankment, and then we would allow the natural topography to help the area pond. And these have been sized in a way where it's the maximum pool possible without providing any damage to any nearby structures. So these are all sized to prevent damage to any structures in the area, and they're sized to provide the maximum pool available. So, I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. On the embankment itself, we have a conduit that goes through the embankment that allows natural stream flow to pass through when there's not a storm event. When the storm event occurs, it chokes off here, and the pool begins to form behind the embankment. So, again, these are sized in a way this is the maximum possible pool that we could have without affecting any structures in the area. So, that's the way these different outlines came to be for the different basins. Yes.
Can you give us, I know there's a scale there, but I'm not good at that. Can you give us a sense of what the numbers look like in terms of feet across and depth and height and things like that?
Sure. I mean, this is a 30% design, but you're looking at roughly 300 to 400 feet across here, and the height right now on this particular Highland West was roughly 12 feet high to get this pool size. But again, that's very preliminary. The way they developed that was just, when we're in a feasibility study, we're trying to justify the flood damage reduction. So we're saying, what's the maximum pool we can create to reduce as much damage as possible without creating a damage elsewhere.
Scott, the high school's up there, right? Yes. That's correct.
Abington, yes.
That's Highland Road, correct?
That's Highland
Highland
Avenue.
Avenue.
And this is a residential zone down here at the bottom, is that what that is?
The yellow line?
The yellow line?
This is property lines.
Yeah, these are the property boundaries.
Okay, so this is a park now, this is just township property.
Correct.
What's the limit down there on the Highland Avenue where that yellow line is?
What's the limit?
Is it, what's the physical, where is that end?
This line here?
Where the water ends at the bottom there, on that road, Highland Avenue.
Oh, how close is this to the property line?
Yeah. Well, where is that in relationship to, say, the high school or anything?
Well, the Bader Park is up in the upper portion where the picnic benches are and the right, but the structures, the playgrounds. I mean,
Folks, if I can just interrupt for 1 second. I think it's going to be a little more productive if Scott just finishes going through the general information, and then we can have folks ask right after he's done explaining, the projections of as they're thus far engineered of these basins. Then everyone can ask questions, because that way you can get up to the mic, because we really do want to get everyone's questions on record. Because it is important for us to review and have a record of what everyone asks, as well as what the concerns everyone expresses. So if that's okay with everyone, Scott, if you want to just finish giving us the layout of the three basins, and then we'll stop for some questions, and then we'll move on from there.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to. I mean, I don't have a lot more to say. I just want to re-explain the theory behind these basins. I mean, basically, they're low-lying areas with natural drainage, where areas that already pool to some extent now. And what we're looking to do is take advantage of this topography and increase that pool size by building an embankment on the downstream side. And the embankment would consist of an earthen berm on the front face on the upstream side with rock to stabilize the embankment on the downstream side. And the reason for the stabilization with the rock is all of these, as I was mentioning earlier, all these basins are sized for the maximum pool that could be available. So if there's a potential to exceed that pool size, these embankments are designed to overtop safely, and that way that pool size that you see there, it can't be any bigger than that, because once the volume of water gets beyond that, it will go over the embankment. So,
Scott, do you want to show the other flip to the graphic so everyone can see all three of the proposed dry detention basins?
sure, this is the most downstream. This is the Beta Road Basin.
That's a pine tree.
So, should we have a Q&A about this? All right, so I think, folks, what we're going to do, since Scott just presented this, we're going to go ahead and we'll take some questions that you have so far so that you don't forget your questions. If I could please ask that everyone come up to the podium. You can speak either directly into that attached mic, or you can borrow the mic that Scott's holding. And if you could just come up and state your name and address first, and then please ask your question. Thank you.
My name is Joe Madison. I live Glenwood Avenue, right off of the park. It's nice to see this berm and all of the retention wall on one side, but every lake and every pool has, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 sides to it. You're saying that this berm that goes along, the first one you were showing, that goes along Highland Avenue, you've got Highland Avenue there, you've got this 12-foot high barrier. But the land is not even. It's high on one side and it's low on the other. It's higher towards the high school and it's lower towards going down towards SPS to get our directions right. What's the difference in topography, and what happens if you have a major flood, as you say, and it reaches up to the 12-foot barrier to go over it? But what if on one side it's only 6 foot? You don't have a wall there. Does that mean it's like a boat with a hole on one side and it's going to go flowing down into the housing that runs down towards SPS?
Thank you very much. Scott, do you have an answer for that?
Sure. Yeah, so you can see on these figures we have the 1-foot contours. They may be hard to see, but the placement of the embankment is based on tying into high ground based on the contours. So when I say that it's 12 feet high, it's 12 feet from the creek bottom to the top of the basin, but different parts of the wall will be a different distance from ground based on the topography. And if the flows coming in exceed what can be held with this maximum pool, the embankment can act as a spillway to basically pass the extra flow safely.
Scott, if I can pipe in with a follow-up question while Mr. Brzezinski comes to the podium, just so everyone's on the same page. You said that past a certain volume of rainfall, the embankment will top over. So what is to prevent other parts from spilling over into places where there is no embankment? I think maybe that's probably what some folks want to know. You could just kind of hammer out the science of that so we're all on the same page.
Okay.
John, if I may, I think perhaps what this gentleman was asking, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to assume, but I think he's asking, will the tops of these embankments be level?
They will be.
Okay. Yeah. So that if it's overtopped, presumably the water will flow evenly across the top of the embankment.
Yeah, as they're envisioned right now, they're level, but we're at a 30% design, so it's.
But I mean the general design premise.
The general design premise is that.
They'll be level. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
John, can you give your name and address so we have it for the record?
John Basinski, 553 Beta Road.
Thank you.
If I could just add in real quick, if you look at the light shaded blue polygon, that follows a similar contour line. So the elevation at the berm is the same elevation along the edge all along that ponding area. So when it backs up, that water's flat behind there. And then when it reaches a little bit above that elevation, it will spill over. So it's not like one side's higher than the other. They follow the same contour. So what you're seeing, that blue, that light blue, it's all the same elevation.
Please, name and address, please.
Hi, Nicole Muma, 506 Beta Road. Can you speak to what the woods are going to look like after the fact? Like what the impact is going to be on the nature that we enjoy? Thanks.
Sure. The intent of these, we have an environmental assessment that was done with these, and the intent of these is not to disturb the land. This is area that gets wet already. We're just increasing the extent of the wet area. But the soil type in this area can handle from what we've learned already, can handle the moisture, and the detention basin itself. We're not going to excavate out a basin. We're going to rely on the natural topography. So that part of the rationale behind that was to minimize environmental impact.
You could. It's.
Hi, Nicole Muma, 506 Beta Road. How do you not excavate then? I don't understand the science of it.
Well, when I say we don't excavate the basin, but we'll have minimal excavation to build the embankment. So, but what we're relying on, looking at the maps, looking at the topography, the land already has natural drainage into this area. So we won't excavate a bowl to increase that drainage. We'll rely on the existing drainage. And by building the embankment, it'll just increase the amount of water that can pond in that drainage area.
Hi, Rich Weigel, 627 Rodman Avenue, also in the Planning Commission. I have a couple of questions. First of all, what is the return period of the design flood for these basins is number one. And number two, you talk about the benefits. Where will those benefits accrue? Will they accrue primarily in Cheltenham Township, and how much of those benefits will accrue within Abington Township?
So the return period for the basins were not set to a specific return period. Each individual basin was sized for the maximum amount of water it could pond without impacting an adjacent structure. So at this point, we don't have the exact return period. We will have that during design. We will know that when we actually fully design these basins. But right now, it could be, these are intended for more frequent storms, like the 100-year storm. These are not going to hold back a 100-year storm. These are going to hold back more frequent events. And then as far as the benefits, majority of the benefits will be realized in Cheltenham with these basins. There will be some benefits in Abington, but in this feasibility study, we haven't measured those benefits to date.
If I could just add, Scott had mentioned earlier economic development benefits. And so when we look at our basins, we're looking at the benefits. We're not designing to a particular frequency. A lot of times you'll hear a flood project is designed to a certain level. That's not how we look at it. We look at what are the benefits and what maximizes the benefits. So it's not driven by a particular storm frequency. So from one basin to the next, they might hold back a different frequency to each one. So it will vary across the entire system. So it's not designed to a specific one. It's all driven by those benefits.
Any gut feeling, 25-year, 10-year?
I don't have a gut feel, but I know when we look at the water surface profiles, we see a multiple foot reduction in the 100-year flood elevation when we modeled that profile through there. So, but that's as a whole system, not at each particular basin. I don't have the information to tell you each one. This is what it is.
So they're going to be overtopped relatively frequently. Within 10 years, is it going to have one or two overtopping events?
If we had another Irene and Lee that moved through a few years ago, these would mostly all be overtopped by something like that. But the common summer thunderstorm that we see frequently, those will be retained. So we're seeing that the benefits are being accrued at the more frequent events. And also to talk about some of your benefits, one of the things we did, part of our benefit analysis, we have to look at drainage areas that are larger than 1 square mile, 1.5 square miles to account those benefits. So we do know there'll be benefits in Abington Township as a result of this, but we didn't calculate what those benefits were because they weren't going to be part of, we can't include those as part of our justification. So we're really focused on the Cheltenham benefits. But we do know there are benefits in Abington. We just don't have those particularly quantified.
When it comes to the question, how is that going to be based on benefits in Cheltenham versus benefits in...
Okay, and that's a good question.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to say.
The question that had to do is how is cost sharing going to be divided with Cheltenham and Abington on this? When we get into the feasibility study right now is cost shared at a 50-50 cost share. So Cheltenham Township has paid 50% of the study. When we get into design and implementation, I had referenced right at the start we need a new agreement. And the cost share is going to change to 65% federal, 35% non-federal. The non-federal sponsor, in this case, may be Cheltenham Township. It could be a combination of multiple sponsors. That we leave up to whoever the non-federal sponsor is to determine. What we do is the federal government will bring 65%, and where that other 35% is an agreement between, in this case, Cheltenham and Abington, or another community or something. But that's something that Cheltenham and Abington will work out separate from us.
Eric, actually, Mr. Weigel, I'm sorry. Eric, would you mind sharing the mic with Mr. Weigel so we can hear? Because your questions are actually extremely relevant. We definitely like to get them on video.
I just wondered if there's an opportunity for any state funding picking up the local part.
There is that possibility. Our requirement for the cost share match, it has to be non-federal. So there could be a state grant that is applied to it, as long as it's, example, like FEMA funding sometimes is made for mitigation. That would be a federal match and couldn't be used against it. So it's just a non-federal component. So it could be the state, or it could be the county, or some other organization.
Question. Where is the 100-year flood boundary in these areas? Can that be shown on some of these maps? That would be useful, because I think you're probably not close to the 100-year flood level with the boundaries of the reservoirs.
We don't have that with us, but we do have the mapping to overlay. There are some of the creeks, there is no FEMA-adopted 100-year floodplain in those areas as well. So it varies along the streams. But
if that is available, if it turns out that at least for some of these areas, if there is a 100-year floodplain delineation, you could get that to us so we can share it with everyone here and all of our other constituents. That would be great. Before, I know we have another neighbor who's about to get up to speak. Actually, while you approach the podium, I'm going to just pause for a second. There are a couple of other folks that I want to acknowledge who are here, and I apologize for not acknowledging certain folks before. I don't know if he's still in the room, but our board president and Ward 5 Commissioner Wayne Luker is here or was here or will be here again. Our Ward 8 Commissioner, Peggy Myers, is present. We have several members of our Planning Commission, including Mr. Weigel, who just spoke. We have members of our Shade Tree Commission here. Our zoning officer, Mark Pennical, is present. And most importantly, some special Ward 12 residents, Commissioner Farron's kids, are here. So we got to keep the language appropriate. And now we can continue, please. So again, name and address. Thank you.
My name is John Candelas, and I live at 731 Highland. With these maps, what is your first name? Is it Scott? Scott. With these maps, how do we define, limits or the correlation on the ground to a road or something like that? For example, in this thing, where is that upper reach there? How many feet is that from the berm on all these maps?
Okay, so you're looking for the footage from basically from the embankment to the top?
Are these things fenced?
They're not fenced.
Okay.
So the width across this embankment here,
Right.
based on, would be roughly 200 to 250 to 300 feet wide.
And that other upper reach would be about 540, something like that?
Probably a little bit more than that, but yeah, roughly.
Okay. Where is a road to this thing? This is a road over here, Beta? Is that a, where is a road?
There's a road coming in right here.
And that's Beta?
I think Bader is, I don't think Bader's shown on here.
It's parallel to the embankment?
It's just off the visibility of the map.
It would help if you mark some of these roads with names,
Okay.
okay? And say, do you think there should be fencing on this thing? What happens when these things are full? For kids playing in that area and stuff like that?
Well, the thinking was if they're dry most of the year, that there wouldn't be a safety issue because
What about when it does fill?
Well,
Or animals, for example?
the area that we're looking at are areas that get wet now. We're just increasing the area that gets wet. So it's something we could look at during design if we find that.
How high are these berms then? Did you say they're going 12 feet high at the time?
Right.
So there's a possibility you can have 12 feet of water, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Maybe some kids don't swim, you know?
That's a good point.
Mr. Candelas, just so you know, I will get you. We all have copies of these maps. I will get you these maps, and anyone else who wants them. I'll prepare ones. These were prepared by the Army Corps of Engineers, but I'll be happy to add labels in case anyone had trouble seeing where the various streets are. I'll add clear labels. Oh, absolutely. No, I will. I will get that. I don't know if you're on my email list, but I'll make sure to get that to you.
Okay.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Phil Coates, and I reside at 742 Winding Road. Related to my neighbor's question that lives on Beta Road, I see the blue, and where the blue is, will there trees be sticking through that water?
Yes.
Will there be trees sticking through it throughout the whole basin?
Yes.
When the basin, I guess when I think about it, a more direct question is when the basin is prepared. I have read that some trees will need to be taken down. So, for a basin like this, just to use this one as an example, what percentage of the blue area would you say would need to be treeless?
Okay. So just to take one step back, again, we're at a 30% design, and the concept behind this design is to have minimal excavation, and the only excavation is to build the embankment itself. So the intent is not to take trees down, and the intent is to allow water to pond in areas where the soil can already handle additional water. So, one thing to keep in mind with these basins is they're intended to, after the storm event moves through, about 18 to 24 hours after the storm event moves through, they'll be dry again. So, the thinking behind is that we didn't want a permanent pool of water because it could change the vegetation and it could change the dynamics of the area as well.
I appreciate what you're saying, and you mentioned the word excavating, and to remove a tree, you don't need to excavate. You can just cut it at the base. So there would obviously be areas that would need to be excavated, and that would have a detrimental impact on the trees nearby for sure. But are you telling me that beyond the area that would need excavation, there would not be tree removal?
That's correct. And also regarding excavation, one thing that we're very sensitive to, and during the design process is, we recognize that we haven't done a subsurface investigation, a geotechnical investigation out there yet. So during the design phase, we already have a line item to do a large-scale geotechnical investigation, and we may find that this soil is not suitable to build these embankments, and we may have to import soil. In a case like that, there would be no excavation to build the embankment, or, a comment, in the public comment could affect our direction going forward, because we recognize that, from the local insight that we may not be able to excavate in this area to build our embankment. So, we're at a 30% design, and there's a long way to go, and there's a lot of this public comment period will help us, know the potential impacts of what we're doing.
Well, so can you tell me with some certainty that, for the most part, where the maximum water line is shown for these basins, as are shown on these maps that you're showing now, that the trees that are there now, say that they were built now, the trees that are there now, except obviously where the impoundment is and adjacent to it, that the trees that are there now would remain there?
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joe Neiman. I'm at 772 Wooded Road. I've been a resident of Abington for 40 years. I work at Abington Hospital for the last 30 years. And I guess prior to that, I grew up on Rock Lane. So I've seen what has happened at Cheltenham through the last couple of years. My parents have a day camp that Rock Creek runs through. So I've seen the flooding there, and in my backyard, I've seen the water build up following the weir or the dam that was built there probably 8 to 10 years ago. And from what that area looked like 8 to 10 years ago to what it looks like now is a big difference. The water sits in there for 24 to 48 hours now. So I get 4 feet of water in my backyard now that sits there till it comes down off of the weir, and there is damage. It does not look the same way it looked many years ago. People had weddings down there. I was talking, one of the Binswangers came by and said, I remember when my daughter got married down below, and it looks vastly different than it does now. The water sits in there, and the trees that are naturally there from the water sitting in there for the length of time the trees eventually go down. And the grasses that once grew there no longer grow there, and it does not look the same. And there's also the problem with when these are put in, who maintains them. Now, I grew up in Cheltenham. There was a building project there, and Cheltenham has continued to overbuild over those last 50 years. The major flood in Cheltenham occurred in 1967. 1971, they took 60 acres of space and put 60 homes where the area was zoned for 20. That area all then ran down. They built a retention basin above, saying that they would maintain it, but in 60 years, I don't think anybody has been back there. The areas along Rock Creek and Tookeny Creek, where the Boy Scout camp was, that's all built up, and that's all built up along that creek. And the areas below it, Ashburn Country Club, now they want to build more homes, which all then go into that flood basin. So, we're fine. I'm fine doing some part in this, but Cheltenham has not done equal parts. And my parents still own the day camp in Elkins Park. When the water floods now, that weir that was put in 7 to 10 years ago holds the water back. I don't think Bader Road has flooded in the last 7 to 10 years since that's been up there. Has it? No?
Since the pipe was put in.
Since the new pipe was in, it has not flooded.
The road hasn't been over the top. The project certainly has.
I think, and I know we have some folks here from Bader Road, I think, who are going to speak to their, it's safe to say, speak to their experiences about that. So, yes.
But part of it is the continuing maintenance of these weirs or dams that are put in. Who maintains them? And the one that we have in our backyard, truthfully, has not been maintained for the most part. I think they were there recently, but up until that, in the last 7 or 8 years, it really hasn't been maintained. Also, if you read that brochure that you put out that describes everything, it doesn't say that some of the benefits will be in Abington. It says all of the benefits will be in Cheltenham. That's in that second paragraph there. I guess, and the other thing is that that you are taking property. I mean, on that drawing, it takes about a third of my acreage, which is a significant part of my acreage. So, and that does something to devaluate property. To say that the properties along this area won't be devaluated is not true. So it will affect us, and there are statements in that brochure saying that everybody was fine with it. I do have a problem with the fact that this has been going on in Cheltenham for 3 years, and now all of a sudden it is coming to our attention when there have been meetings held in Cheltenham for 3 years without our knowledge and without our input. I find that very unfair. And then to pop it right now when it's in the midst of a holiday season, I think is really not fair as well.
Dr. Neiman, I can tell you, not to interrupt, but I think so many of us, including up here, are on the same page with regard to the amount of time these discussions have been going on and the fact that it was just, for want of a better term, sprung on us. I know Manager Lefevre has a comment, and then I'm actually going to ask something based on Dr. Neiman's questions. So, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman. Can I just say a point of order? Since this is our first experience with the Army Corps of Engineers and the public comment process, can we ask the representative of the Corps to explain how that process works? And if the comments made this evening by the residents, will they be taken into consideration as part of that process, or the residents need to put that in writing and in what format and how that process actually works? I don't want anyone to be under the impression what they say tonight will be evaluated, or do they need to follow up that in writing?
That is an excellent point. If you gentlemen are prepared to speak to that, that's a very, very good question.
Great. So with our public comment period, we're required to have a minimum of 30-day comment period when we release the draft report. It was said earlier that was originally set. It was actually, I think, December 14th to set. So we've looked at the request, and we've already extended that beyond that 30-day period because we recognize the timing and to give the community an opportunity to have their input. Stuff that's addressed in this meeting is not considered part of our official record as far as the comment period, so we're not capturing these as part of that. What we do ask is that people submit written comments to us. You can either write a letter and send it to us, or you can do it through email. We do have on our website and the public notice is a link to where those comments can be sent to. So we ask that you do put those in writing and send them to us. Now, what we do is we get all the comments. As I said earlier, we have to respond to each comment that we get. The response, it may change something in the study, or it may be a response that we acknowledge what the comment is, but each one is considered and responded to. Usually, the way they're responded to is within the document itself. We include all the written comments that we have under our pertinent correspondence. And usually we put our response right on top of the comments, so you could track easily. Here's the letter I wrote, and here's the response that the Armored Corps gave us. So every comment we get, again, we do evaluate, and we do have to respond to. That right there, they put up the email address that will go into a general mailbox that's monitored and will be associated with the study.
Mr. Cornelius, actually, in my most recent newsletter, I actually provided not only this email address, but also the physical address. And anyone who wants that, I have it right here on my computer. I can read that later. You can come get it from me. I can email it to you, whatever is most convenient for everyone. But I have the mailing address as well as the email address already right here for you.
It doesn't all have to be email. We'll take the old traditional mail as well.
Eric and Scott, I don't know, just before we move forward, I know there's a comment that Commissioner Sanchez wants to make, but just before we get off of Dr. Neiman's questions, is there, certainly a very relevant question is the issue of when the proposed basin area, and in particular when the proposed embankment crosses over onto private property. If you could speak to that, and if possible, if you could speak to the question, if you're able to speak to the question of the weir that Dr. Neiman described that was built you said seven or 8 years ago. If you could address those two things, I think that those would be certainly the private property issue, I think, is one a lot of folks are going to be very interested in hearing.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the weir that was referenced, the impacts of that, but we can look into that, but I can't address that today. I don't have that information.
That weir holds the water back in the middle of, right in the middle of that lower Beta section, right between your lowest retention basin and the second retention basin, both below Highland. Right in the middle there already is a weir and a dam that holds water back.
We talked about Highland East. Is that?
Could you actually? You could. Would you mind if you wouldn't mind sharing the mic with Dr. Newman, because the description of the weir is important. If nothing else,
yeah. If you put that last,
it would be Highland East, just after Highland East.
Where's your property? Oh, here.
Highland East, yes.
Right. There's a weir that goes.
It's in Beta Road.
No, it's the one above that.
Yeah, if you go back to Highland East, please.
I think part of the question is, what are these yellow?
The weir would be right at the very tip top.
Yeah.
Of that.
Explain.
Where's your house, Jim?
Your house is down here somewhere. You're probably right here.
Right here. Okay.
The weir is right here.
The weir's right.
Come on. I live here. The weir.
If you could just grab the mic when you're describing where the weir is. If you could just grab the mic, please.
This is Beta Road is here. Oh, they changed it back. Never mind. I go to the other one. I'm sorry. The weir is down here.
This is Highland X, right here.
Yeah, the weir is right here.
Our property, and it's right across from our property, right there.
Right. The weir is already here. So this weir here holds water
I
back.
thought this was Highland.
No. Okay.
They switched it around.
So the weir that is here right now holds water, and there is a low area which covers most of this, which you're showing right here, and the water sits here as it is. Now, it's supposed to drain out over a 24, 48-hour period, but only if the openings are maintained, which they aren't always maintained. They fill with debris, with wood, and stuff like that. So this area here will get 3 to 4 feet of water right now, and that water will stay there for a little bit. And that's why this stream isn't as heavy during most of the heavy rains. But there is already a weir here. So I don't know how much, well, I'll let some of the other people speak about that.
I just have a couple comments, I guess. All of this area is natural flood absorbing area as it is. And we went through a couple of extensive projects to eliminate some of the flooding down that was happening on Beta Road. So we've done a lot of things as a neighborhood to help everybody. And part of that, if I remember correctly, there was Cheltenham somewhere in the background of all of that. So it was the beginning of what's happening now. I find it kind of scary that studies and recommendations are being done and people haven't actually come and walked the area, seen it when it rains really hard, and seen where actually maybe we've solved the problem here, but it hasn't been solved further down in Cheltenham. Maybe they still have the old-fashioned stuff that's making their flooding, and they're building, and they're not being responsible. And I'd like to know, when you have private sponsors that could potentially invest in this project, would that be developers, or who could potentially be sponsors?
Michelle Neiman at 772 Woodward. I was just wondering how in your planning and designing something here you would never have looked at the land or known that there was already a dam there. Just curious about that. And my other question, I was in the report, it said that they had polled neighbors and that neighbors were okay with the project. And I wondered on what you based that information, that the neighbors were okay with the project, what study was done, or what study will be done.
I know it's sort of a lot of questions at once. If you need a reminder of that series of questions, please let me know.
Okay. Let me explain a little bit how the study works. We do know there's an obstruction there. Me personally, up here in front of the public meeting, may not be ready to address individual specifics about a feature there. We have had people out in the field. We've done extensive surveys of the area, walking there. We have a whole team of, it's not just Scott and myself. There's a whole team of engineers and biologists that work on this study. We have extensive modeling that we could go into. We could talk for days about the technical analysis that was done, and I could talk about the Gisham model and different things that were done and how we analyzed the rainfall events and the flood heights and the types of damages. You're not seeing a lot of that during this public meeting. That we're just trying to give you kind of an overview of the study, but we are happy to come back and go into that detail and go into all the ins and outs and the technical parts of the study. They are the appendices. If you look at the main report, which is actually a relatively short document, that's posted, but there's also all the technical appendices as well that go into excruciating detail, the engineering analysis that's gone behind this. So this isn't just looking at a contour and just kind of coloring the map. There's been a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of really smart people that have worked on this particular study. When we looked at, Scott and I were talking about where there was an existing embankment. We talked about we need to justify the studies. Now, we could modify an existing embankment that's already there versus constructing a new one. But the study looked at if we had to go in, worst case, and develop a whole new embankment. And we also know that the embankment that there's now is larger than what's downstream. So to maximize those benefits that Scott talked about, we do know there's modifications that need to be done. So instead of going in and saying, well, what would it take to modify it, let's just go say, all right, we need to build a new embankment in here for the purposes of the feasibility study. Let's approach it that way. During actual designs, we could modify an existing structure that's already there versus constructing a new one. That level of detail, we didn't get into because right now we're interested in the economics and the environmental sensitivity of the study. We're looking to just justify getting into that next phase. There were additional questions about operation and maintenance. It's a similar answers to the cost sharing. When the Army Corps of Engineers is done constructing a project, we transfer all the operation and maintenance responsibility over to the non-federal sponsor. So whoever that non-federal sponsor is, they're responsible for that. So similar to who cost shares, that would be an agreement between Cheltenham and Abington or whoever the sponsor was to determine who was responsible for that operation and maintenance. That's part of the agreement. When we execute the agreement, it's the person that signs that agreement. They are responsible for that operation and maintenance when we hand the project over. Again, that's not something we will get involved in, and we will not get involved in those discussions, negotiations on who does what and percentages for that. On that map, those yellow, green lines, those are our property lines. When we go in to construct a project, it's the responsibility of a non-federal sponsor to obtain the real estate associated with that. In these cases, there'd be flood easements that would be needed to get obtained. We have part of the feasibility study includes what we call a real estate plan that goes into the details, specifics about what those easements are. But it would be up to the non-federal sponsor to work with the property owners to get easements for those areas. So in this case, we're looking for an easement of where there may be flooding on that property. We'd look for easements for access. Same as operation and maintenance. Yes, and I'm using the word non-federal sponsor right now because right now Cheltenham Township is a non-federal sponsor for the feasibility study. That's it. There is a new project partnership agreement that gets signed to go on to design and construction of the project. Right now, we do not have a project partnership agreement with any non-federal sponsor, and we will not pursue one until our feasibility study is approved at that North Atlantic Division that I had mentioned earlier in the meeting. So at this point, we know Cheltenham Township is interested in flood control and flood mitigation within their community. They commissioned a study they partnered with us on the study to look at those alternatives. But right now, there is no agreement. So I'm referring to them generally as the non-federal sponsor.
Eric, if I could just get a little fine-tuning on your answer based on part of Mrs. Bickley's question. Whoever the official non-federal sponsor becomes, are you talking about a private entity in the sense of, I believe a developer was mentioned, or are we talking about just non-federal governmental agencies, Cheltenham Township, Abington Township, et cetera?
Okay, it will not be with a private developer. The non-federal sponsor has to have the ability to acquire real estate and get the easements for us. So we are not going to partner with a, I don't know, Walmart or somebody to do this. So we're looking at a local community or in some cases, non-federal, non-profit organizations.
Actually, could you if you could bring the mic? I apologize for misinterpreting that part of your question.
I just caught something that you said a while back. If the state doesn't support it, somebody said, how do you raise money to get the funding for the project? And if the state, is it state grants? And I'm pretty sure I heard that yes, it could be the state, it could be private, it could be other entities, which opened the door in my head. Okay, what exactly does that mean? And what, I'm confused really as to what is actually behind this whole project, whether it's really flooding and concern for citizens or whether it's really development related, because they want to keep developing. They don't want basins where they can develop, but they want to keep developing, but they want other people to take on this responsibility. I guess that's where I'm confused, and I'd like an answer.
The attitude of the landowners, the adjacent landowners, are generally positive towards this project. The landowners are concerned about the continued flooding and erosion within the area. That sounds like the landowners at the other end, and you didn't really answer my question about that.
Can I ask what you're reading from?
While you're looking at that, Eric, just for the record, my interpretation of that, because I know that there was some a number of Betawood residents were concerned by that comment, because certainly no one in Abington Township has been asked or polled or surveyed. My interpretation of that, Eric, was that referred to Cheltenham residents. If that is the case, if we could make that clear, because that section, no, absolutely.
It's on our property, shouldn't we?
Oh no! This is again. I'm not filling in words for Eric, but no, absolutely. What was provided to everyone, that report did contain that comment, and I do see that it wasn't necessarily clear. But is that correct, Eric? That refers to Cheltenham residents, and thus far there hasn't been a similar surveying of Abington residents. Is that fair to say?
That seems accurate. That comment was from our real estate plan and more of a general statement. And what I say is that's a valid comment of that we will need to address in the report. Who are the residents referenced in that statement?
Okay. So, I think if we could move on, I know we have some folks queued up to ask questions, and after those folks go, I'd like to give our neighbors from Beta Road, if they so desire, the opportunity after this next crop of questions to come up and ask questions and make comments, because I know there are folks on Beta Road with a very different perspective and experience on this. Unless there's something you want to...
Well, I just know that this woman didn't get her question. She has the follow-up on the funding.
Okay.
And when we look at the funding for the project, it's a non-federal entity, so it could be through grant money from the state or another community or a nonprofit organization. The mission behind the study from the Army Corps of Engineers is 100% flood risk mitigation. The whole project is justified on the economics associated with it. Our studies are not meant to, or there is no mission to support future development within a community or within the floodplain. The entire study is based on the merits of what are the damages that are going to be reduced by the project for flooding events. And that is the whole intent and mission of that feasibility report.
Can we, if you... If you ask your, please ask your follow-up, and after the answer, I do want to let the folks who've been waiting patiently in line.
April Haladzik, 792 Wooded Road. In terms of the cost benefit, you mentioned $9 million cost with a 3 times benefit. Over what time period?
Okay, we use a 50-year project life for our studies. So we look at the damage that occurred, various frequencies. Those damages are annualized, and we model it over a 50-year project life.
Okay. So if we could invite some of the folks who've been waiting very patiently. Again, name and address, and thank you very much for waiting.
My name is Michael Bear, 602 Bader Road. Can we switch this back to the Bader Road picture, please? It was a bit hard. We're stuck there.
It's there somewhere.
Back. There we go. Is your intent to eliminate any of the pipes that run underground now? Or do you know there's 2 pipes that run under the ground, that there is a dam already there with 2 pipes taking the water away? I got a couple questions. So
that's fine.
Well, speaking to the pipes, we have to do a full subsurface investigation during design phase, so we'll look at all that during the design phase.
Because right now, the pipes that are there take the water away that does accumulate. It does get to the top of the dam that's there. Doesn't overflow the dam since they put it in. The second building this berm, what would it do to the water table in that area? I have water problems in my basement as it is. Now all of a sudden I got a 12-foot wall with water retaining, so that means my basement is just going to be a swimming pool all year round.
Yeah, one of the constraints and requirements of any of our projects, we can't induce flooding where flooding doesn't already exist. So we would have, when we do our geotechnical subsurface investigation, if we find it could greatly impact the nature of the design, because if there's going to be laterals coming in, we don't want to have head pressure forcing water into people's basements.
I haven't had flooding since they put the pipes in, but I know once the water table rises, I'll have that issue. The next question I have is, all this water that we see from Baderwood, from the previous levee, which was installed, everything is coming from the school district. I mean, is there any focus on their responsibility? I mean, they could build $1 million stadium and take care of all that other stuff, but all this water comes from the Abington Township School District. And I know that's not a good thing to say around here, but, you know, it's really curb it there before it comes downhill. I mean, I've been dealing with this for years. I mean, I'm 250 years old. I mean, you know, in 96 we had the flood. That was a 100-year flood. I think 2 people died. 98 was the other flood. That was another 100-year flood. I went through so many 100-year floods and a 50-year flood, and they keep saying this is not, you know, it's unlikely. But we've been going through this in Bader. I mean, uphill, they're not having an issue, Bader and down. But since they put the pipes in, knock on wood, we've been pretty good. Also impacting the environment. I mean, as far as I know, I think the whole Bader Woods, I don't think it's township property. I think it's private property. Well, it may be considered township. The deer and everybody else that lives there, you know, they're not too happy about all this stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, speaking to your point about upstream and upgrading the high school area, when we located these basins, we walked the watershed looking for. We just tried to find low-lying areas with natural drainage, and so we may have missed a prime area.
The Highland Road dam. This was proposed 18 years ago by residents. You know, build up the road and curb the water there. Don't let it come downhill. But you know, it's been not going to say lately. It's been fine. You know. But I'm just thinking you're just making more problems.
Mr. Bear, if you could just get a little closer to the mic.
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you.
And I would say, please make comments on the public record regarding this, because we're required to address all of these comments, and these comments help us. They help the study.
When we have floods, I don't see anybody out in the woods. I'm out there with hip-boot waders walking back and looking at the streams, and because I have an investment to protect. If it does reach that point, but so. That's where my concern is,
Thank you.
Mr. Baer, thank you. And just for the record, just so everyone knows, I think maybe some folks know this, but the Abington School District and Abington Township are two completely different entities governed by two different bodies. So you can say whatever you want about them. Just don't say anything bad about us. I'm very sensitive.
You know what? Don't let a school bus hit your house because it's protected by law that the school is not responsible. It's your own responsibility if the school bus hits your house.
I try not to let anything hit my house. I'll go you one better.
I just can't believe that's a law in the state of Pennsylvania, but it is. Believe it or not.
I believe you.
Hi, I'm Jim Bickley, 758 Winding Road. Thank you very much, Scott and Eric, for your presentation. You're in a tough position tonight, taking these questions. Many of my questions were already asked, but I do have one on the economics, is that when you've made these evaluations and there's a potential need to acquire property, do you take into consideration the devaluation of the property that where land is acquired from, and how that impacts future value, present value, future living space, or the enjoyment of the property?
So when we look at the economics, first we focus predominantly on the structure itself and the contents of the structure. When we look at the easements that may be needed for construction, within the real estate plan, there's a valuation that's given to that property. So we don't actually look at long-term, does your property, it changes your property value with that easement, but we look at when we obtain the real estate compensating for that easement itself.
But you're doing it based upon your valuation present day and not taking into account the property owner's future value. That the fact that they have a retention basin now adjoining or behind their home definitely has an impact. Aesthetically, and as natural as you'd like to make it, it will have an impact. Additionally, as you suggest that this study suggests there's no impact to wildlife, I'm not sure if you haven't spent time in the Baderwood Park area, you really can't make that assessment. I live there, I work there, I see it every day. And so for you to make a general statement that it's not going to have an impact on either environment, wildlife, or anything of that nature is actually offensive. And I find, in addition to that, when asking you about the weir, the fact that it's there, even though you're representatives of an organization, you can't very well come to a presentation and not have that information at hand. That's a very, very important aspect for that general area. It's had an impact. It's had an impact already on that land, and hopefully it's had a positive impact on some residents, maybe not the final fix for those residents, but it's had an impact. And that needs to be incorporated in your study. So far, all of the benefits, again, by and large, are for the benefit of Cheltenham Township. And if these particular basins weren't put in, have you evaluated that? Have you evaluated if we don't put them in Abington? Is there enough of a difference? Because I'm sensing that when you do your cost-benefit assessment, you're not taking complete values into side in terms of cost. Because there's a cost to property owners in terms of value that you need to build into your equation. It's not just the numbers to move the dirt, to cut the trees, whatever you do. And I think that's short-sighted in terms of a real cost of the project, because there's a valuation issue. So there aren't questions, because everybody's asked good questions. And I think it's unfortunate that a project like this has gone on as long as it is, and then we as residents of Abington are introduced to it, and you kindly initially give us 30 days, whether it's required or not required. That seems a little abrupt, a little short-sighted and unfair in terms of having such an impact on a community. And I'll ask whether either of you ever come to the Baderwood Park area during severe rains. Have you been there? Have you come there? Have you been there during the... When you come, is it a bright sunny day or is it raining? Right, and so how can you come up and say this is going to fix it? And beyond that, in your assessment for where you want to put one of the retention basins that happens to have an impact on my property, there is a large hill on the other side that is completely owned by the township. So why would you want to encroach upon private residences? When in fact, when you're doing this cost-benefit analysis, and cost of construction, yes, there might be more cost to move earth, but you're not impacting personal properties. That doesn't make sense to me. And so why wouldn't you evaluate that in your preliminary study? And everything so far tonight is preliminary, and my sense is a lot of time, a lot of money is spent on a preliminary basis. And I guess my last question is, to the extent that Abington Township doesn't support this, what's the process? Is Abington Township able to abruptly put this in terms of this particular plan with the 3 basins in our parks? If they don't approve it, is that where it stops? Or are there issues that we have to contend with as a township? What happens?
So, you had a lot of stuff there.
There's a lot of stuff still here.
Okay. I live in Abington, so I've seen these areas when they
How
flood.
much time have you spent in the park?
So,
I welcome you. The next time it rains hard, I'll bring you a cup of coffee. Come on down.
I live in the community, so I've seen what the impacts are. I was involved after Floyd, I think it was, with some of the buyouts that took place in Abington Township, involved in those projects as well. So I've seen what the impacts are. So this isn't somebody sitting in office, without being aware of what's going on. You go in a public meeting and somebody asks us a question that we need to, kind of scratch our brains to what it is. Is that my fault for not being prepared to address that particular question? Okay, I'll take the blame for that one. It is a pretty detailed study with 9 basins, some areas that we're all trying to get.
It's 1,000 pages.
The real estate itself, you talk about the real estate, I mentioned we don't get the real estate. That's a non-federal sponsor. So you as a property owner say, I don't like the project. I'm not going to give you an easement. Okay. That's your choice as a private property owner not to get the easement, not to sign an easement for the project. We can't build it without that. So, and the federal government is not going to go in and take that from you. So
that's not what this document says.
You can take it if there's a money.
Actually, could you? That's a good point. If you could say that into the mic, please.
That's not what the schedule says in there. The schedule says in there is that if negotiations aren't positive, then the federal government can come in and take those lands. And then there's a chart somewhere in there that shows that what price they'll pay for the land, or how much Cheltenham has to pay for all the properties that they were going to take.
The federal government is not going to come in and take the property.
Well, your plan says that. So if this is a preliminary plan, that I would hope the second draft strikes that.
Yeah. And let me clarify some few things for you. A local community can indemnify a property they choose. A local community can go. So Abington can go and take your property and pay you for that. The federal government will not. That's not what we're allowed to do. And we don't get the real estate. That's why it's a non-federal responsibility to do that. So at that point, if the project goes down a certain road and Abington chooses to take your property, that's the community officials that within Abington that do that. So that's not the Army Corps of Engineers saying, I'm taking your property. It's not the federal government saying, I'm taking your property. When we go and we get easements, there are appraisals that are done. And there's a fair value that's agreed to in order for that easement that we compensate for that. So it's not us just saying, that's not us just saying, hey, I'm giving you this X amount and take it or leave it. There's appraisers that go out and there's a formal process that takes place to value what that easement's worth.
Excuse me. Actually, could you bring Mr. Pennicap the mic, or if you come up, whichever. Just again, we want to get you on the mic.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just came to me. You said Abington can take the property and pay them some amount of money. Abington only found out about this a month ago. My guess is Abington's not going to want to take landowners' property. Can Cheltenham take the property because they're the non-governments, or they're the private sponsor?
Okay, good. First, I'm saying Abington can take your property as, that's their right as a community. You're exactly right. They just looked at this. They're not going to vote today, say, yes, I'm taking your property, we're moving forward.
Yeah, let me just reiterate.
John, go on record.
Talking about taking any property. I'm really not a big fan of taking any property. So,
mentioning that is to clarify.
My ears turned red when he said that. But
mention that's to clarify that the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, is not going to come in and take your property. We don't have that ability to do that. It's a local community that has that ability. Whether they choose to or not, that follows their process. I am not a real estate expert, but I imagine Cheltenham can't take property in Abington. That it's up to the Abington Township to do that, not Cheltenham.
Keeps pointing at me. Commissioner Sanchez,
I'm going to go out on a limb,
want to say.
and I'm going to look at my former law professor over here, and but say that I don't believe that one municipality can use eminent domain or in another municipality. So I don't think that Cheltenham can come in to condemn Abington's. Township Manager Lefevre, do you have a different opinion?
I don't necessarily disagree, but I do recall in Chester County, in Coatesville, they did condemn property in an adjoining municipality for purpose of building a municipal golf course. And that was litigated for a long, long time, and I'm not sure of the ultimate outcome, but it was property outside Coatesville they attempted to condemn and acquire for a municipal golf course.
9 holes would be perfectly fine behind our house.
That would actually add to the property value.
Just to put that on record.
We'll put you on record for that, Mr. Bickley.
I give you credit for jumping in with the 9 holes thing. I gotta give you props for that, Mr. Bickley.
But just to follow up, and again, we're putting you in a difficult position, looking for responses. Obviously, we're a concerned neighborhood about disruption to something that we consider very, very special, the woods. And when you make statements in terms of wildlife, what studies do you do? I mean, it's a great statement that it's not going to have an impact, but so far, even on a preliminary basis, is this all based on the fact that historically you've tried to do things that have an impact, or have you really done any assessment at this point in time?
Okay. As I mentioned, we have a whole team behind us, and they include biologists and wildlife biologists.
But have they been to the woods?
Yes, they have.
Have they been to the woods?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
And they've gone out and they've looked at this area, and they've done their studies. Part of the environmental assessment as to what are the impacts to this area. These areas are already wet. They already retain water. We're increasing the duration of the time up to 24 hours that they will hold water. So we've had the biologists and folks look at that and study what is the potential impact to that. In some areas, we talked. There was a lot of discussion about the trees and things like that. One of the missions of the Corps is environmental restoration and environmental stewardship. So that's something we take very seriously. So we're not looking to go in and degrade an ecosystem for the sake of a flood risk management project. In these areas, we talked about taking trees down or what trees stay. There may be some trees that have to take down in order to construct the project, but we also include a planting plan that goes along with this. And we also look at removing invasive species and planting native species, which actually benefit the environment and benefit the wildlife. If we go in and take out Japanese knotweed and anything else that's in there that's invasive. So we actually look at this project as actually having environmental benefits as well as flood risk management. This is something that we take. This is part of our mission. We're not just going in here to say, hey, we're going to take your nature away so you can't have this because Cheltenham wants to flood risk management. So we look at those impacts and leave it better than before.
And just one last, the idea of the one basin in Baderwood, I guess it's east, I'm not sure, but on the area where there's 2 basins. Did you look at placing the basin on the far side, the bank on the Highland Road? Did you make an assessment that possibly that was an alternative location for a basin?
When the basins were cited, the teams were in the field to evaluate where they felt in their professional judgment were the best location for these basins.
But they didn't take into account the impact from an economic standpoint in terms of property. They just said this might be easiest.
Right up front, they went and looked, as we said, looking at natural topography and looking at those areas to say from an engineering standpoint, where were these basins best be located to maximize the prevention of damages downstream. So that's how they were cited. We didn't go say, we were looking at not impacting insurable structures on those. But in fairness, we didn't say, hey, look at this boundary, might cut, we might need easement on this corner of this property. What's that mean? That was not part of the analysis.
All right. Well, there's obviously lots of questions or other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bickley. I just want to. I know this gentleman has been waiting to speak for a while. I just want to throw out there. I don't want to put anyone on the spot and make anyone speak or make a statement or ask a question who isn't ready or comfortable. But if there are folks, not all, but a lot of the folks we've heard from have been from the sort of the higher elevation areas of Beta Wood, wooded and winding, et cetera. If there's anyone from Beta Road or the lower elevation areas who would like to, anyone else, if there's anyone else who would like to get up and get in line, maybe now would be a good time to do that. But I'm not putting anyone on the spot. I just know there are folks here, so we'll continue with the queue. Please come on up.
Alfred Shive, 403 Stewart Avenue. Mr. Powers knows generally what I'm here about. I admire your patience. There's about 4 of us in this room that ever heard of GIS. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've used GIS for 20 years. I've done stormwater calculations, stuff like that. So I know where all you guys are coming from. I've done this kind of stuff. Aberdeen Proving Grounds, we did stormwater work on there. Indiantown Gap, all kinds of stuff. I've done GIS for 20 years. It didn't show up a whole lot, but Stewart Avenue is adjacent to the culvert downstream of Walnut Street, Jenkintown Road. I think it showed up. It didn't show up a whole lot. And because of the SEPTA substation work close to my place, I know that the back of my property backs onto effectively a retention basin. The big culvert, which maybe you didn't see, Mr. Powers knows what I'm talking about, below Jenkintown Road. So that is a retention basin now, and the state wants to keep that. Now, one question here. Is there anybody here who had their car flooded out in the Jenkintown train station parking lot about 7 years ago? Anybody? Well, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to one of my coworkers at the census. She parked there when she took the train into work. That's one place that I believe the work that they're doing here is meant to reduce. And to clarify a little bit, and you confirm if I'm wrong, one reason it's called comprehensive is because what they're doing is they're distributing the retention of water along the watershed rather than have a few places where water is retained and high water accumulates, such as behind my place. It hasn't been a problem because it doesn't come up to my house. It comes up my yard, but it's not going to affect my property. But that's what they're doing. They're spreading out the accumulation of water during storms. And a little bit of background, I would have suggested that I should have been up here an hour ago, that you guys could have helped people understand a little bit better. We look at this and we know instantly what's going on. Anybody else could have done that and you would have known what was going on. Mr. Powers would have known. But most people don't work with this kind of stuff. So when you have these wiggly lines up there, they don't realize that those are contour lines. The water will accumulate up to the contours. And that is how the outline of all these retention basins is created, in case nobody figured that out. Of course, you're going to have your wall level at the top. Walls are never made uneven. They're meant to come up to a certain point. It's a dam. Think of it as a dam. That's what they're doing. Anyway, one thing this does by backing water upstream from my place, it helps reduce the accumulation of water behind my house, as well as, I'm not sure if you realized about the flooding in the Jenkintown train station area. Yeah, you did. They're trying to reduce the accumulations in certain places. They're spreading it out so that it doesn't affect some people more than other people. And we live, to a certain extent, in a socialistic environment. We've got Social Security. We've got all kinds of things that benefit everybody. And this is about everybody taking part in a problem that affects a lot of people. Your neighbors, maybe not you. And actually, one thing I was going to say at first when I walked up here is, how many people are here because of not in my backyard? That's a lot of what goes on. And that's often a problem. I think that's about all I was going to say. It seemed like there was something else, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scheib.
Good evening. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Phyllis. I'm John Basinski. I live at 553 Bader Road. And the water that comes down Bader Creek through this proposed detention basin off the picture crosses under Bader Road and then goes into Baderwood Creek, which runs behind my house. And my wife and I moved in to 553 Bader Road in 1992. And at that point, we were told we did not need flood insurance. There had been some flooding in the past, but it was decades gone. So imagine my surprise in fall of 1996 when I'm in my garage working on a project, and it's raining really, really hard. And I look out and I say, you know, it can't keep raining this hard for much longer. An hour later, I looked out that window, the door, and I said, it really can't keep raining this hard for much longer. And an hour later, I looked out my garage door, and the water had overtopped Bader Road, and it was halfway through my front yard, and it was all the way through my backyard. And I said, geez, I better go check my basement. And my house is 70 feet from the creek, and the mean water level of the creek is about 8 feet below that. And lo and behold, that entire basin had filled up, and there was a 5-foot wall of water against my basement door. Solid core door, deadbolt lock. It was holding. I'm there with a squeegee, squeegeeing water into my sump pump. Imagine my real surprise when that wall of water blew the door out. And this wall of water starts rushing at me. I ran over to my breaker panel. I shut off the power and ran out of there as fast as I could. Anyway, we were the beneficiaries of 11 inches of rain in 3 hours. And we were told this was a really extraordinary storm, and this kind of thing was really not likely to ever happen again. Well, it happened 2 more times in fairly quick succession after that. I had the pleasure of watching my refrigerator and freezer float by my basement stairs through my basement. And in any event, there were a number of measures that were taken to help alleviate the flooding after that. And they've had some effect. But nonetheless, I've had my basement filled with water 2 more times. And we've been talking a lot of benefits for Cheltenham. I'm going to suggest a benefit for Abington. And that's so that me and my neighbors don't have to live in fear every time it rains hard. And we've got high-powered flashlights looking at the creek to see how fast it's rising and how quickly it's closing on my now well-fortified back of the house. And that's really a part of what all this is about. So I'd suggest that we take our eyes off what they're trying to make us do for Cheltenham and focus on what we can do for our neighbors. And I really ask for your consideration and your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baczynski. You know the drill, name and address.
Good evening. My name is George Kineski. I 565 Bader. I live 2 houses up from John. I've got a rare photo here. This is the flood of '96, and that's me in the middle of Bader Road, halfway into the storm. An hour later, I would have been washed away. Water down at Pine Tree in Bader was over 4 feet deep.
Maybe show it to the folks on the other side. It's quite a photo.
What happens if, for some reason, the neighbors on Wooded and Winding who don't want this project to materialize, the retention basins aren't built, and we get another, let's say, a 300-year flood, and our homes are damaged? Who is legally held responsible for the damage to our homes if, like right now, the Army Corps of Engineers has a possible way of relieving potential flooding on Bader Road? And I realize most of this, Cheltenham is going to garner most of the attention here, but there's a number of homes on Bader Road that this directly affects, and I'm wondering if this doesn't get built and we have major damage to our homes, who is legally responsible for the damages? Is it the township? Is the onus on us, or could it be the people that kind of try to squash this project from being built in the first place? Any attorneys here that can answer that?
I'm probably the least qualified person to answer this. I don't know. Manager Lefevre, for the record, our township solicitor is not present, but that's a question that can actually be related to them very clearly. So I will make sure to get an answer on that. That's a very interesting question.
The work that was done when they built the culvert, it really fixed a lot of the flooding issues. But like John was saying, we get a big rain. I'm out there with the big flashlight watching the water come over the walls and into the backyard, and you don't sleep well at night if you've got a big storm coming. And I just want people to realize that when you're living downstream, that's where the issues are. If you're living up on Winding or Wooded, you can have a 1,000-year flood. They're not going to be affected because they're up the hill. So I just want to look out for my neighbors and me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kineski. Mr. Manager, I don't know if you have any...
Commissioner Spiegelman, no, I was going to agree with you 100%. It's something we can refer to our township solicitor, get a response, and we can forward to the speaker.
Absolutely. Name and address, please. Sir.
Jim Marshall, 1916 Hilltop Road. I have a question in terms of process. By January...
Jim, actually, could you grab maybe, I think probably a little better, since you're tall and soft-spoken. If you could use that mic, it'd be great.
By January 22nd, there's a comment period, and that comment period is for the private sector as well as the township to give questions on this whole proposal. Is that right? So it's the township as well as the citizens here. They're nodding yes.
They're nodding yes. My understanding, and you know what? Let me share as a commissioner. I'm going to share my assessment, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure plenty of people will pipe in and tell me if I'm wrong. The public comment period has been extended to January 22nd, and then there'll be we will. One thing I will ask you gentlemen, just to put you on the spot again, because that hasn't happened enough for you, is as when we wrap up, to sort of make sure everyone understands what the next steps will be. At some point, if the Army Corps of Engineers moves forward and they assess all the public comments they receive, and they make some refinements, they make some changes, there will be a point in the future, if the project even moves forward, where it will come before us, the Board of Commissioners, to decide if we give permission for them to do this on this township land. Am I right about that?
I believe so.
And then there would be just like public hearings that a lot of folks here have seen before, there would be a full public hearing where the entire board, all 15 of us, would hear from the neighbors. We would see what I guess at that point would be the more final, refined presentation and engineering from the Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, that's something that would go before our Planning Commission and our Environmental Advisory Council and Shade Tree Commission would have input. Finally, it would come to us, and all the folks here, and maybe a lot more, would come out again, and it would be our decision. So while this public comment period goes to January 22nd, is it safe to say it is by no means the last chance folks are going to have to give input on this? Am I?
Absolutely. I don't want to speak for the Corps, but we're in the very initial stages of the process, and this is a long-term process, so people have multiple opportunities to voice their opinion, particularly to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, so at some point, it will come before the 15 commissioners, and they will have to vote on it. If it vote no,
use the mic, man.
Does that mean the project ends in terms of these three basins?
Scott?
There's a number of different things that can happen, but if the vote is no and we can't get basically we don't have the real estate, we can't build at these three locations without the real estate. So there's a couple of things. We could go back into the feasibility study and reevaluate other alternatives potentially, because if we know the door is closed on these basins, we know that we can't, then we would probably have to screen them out and see if we could still justify a project with less basins.
Okay, so when you talk about real estate, you're talking about both the private real estate as well as the township real estate. They have to agree to this also. The township has to agree to giving up. Okay.
Well, not giving up, but to allowing the embankments to be built and to allow embankments to be built and other modifications, the taking down of incidental trees and the removal of invasive whatnot, such that these basins would be created that would get wet as delineated on the map during storms of over a certain capacity.
Okay, in terms of timing, what kind of timing do you think that looks like? Let's say it continues on in terms of discussions, et cetera. When do you see a vote coming before this group? A year from now? 2 years from now?
So the public comment period, as you know, would go to the 22nd. At that point, we would be compiling all the comments, and we have to respond to every comment. So that could take, we would try to do that within a 30-day period and have all our responses and have the report updated. Then the report would have to be finalized. The feasibility study would have to be finalized before we could even get into a full design and implementation phase. And the design typically takes 12 months for a full design of the project. And then you have permit acquisition that comes after that. That can take, between the permits and getting the necessary real estate to build the project, that's kind of an unknown. That would say 6 months, but so you're talking it's 2015. It's probably a couple of years before shovels would go to the ground.
Okay. All right. Okay, so 2017 before it comes before. All right. You also said that it was a $9 million project, and I'm going to round numbers here. And am I to understand that 35% of that has to come from Cheltenham and Abington, whatever, some consortium, and the other 65% is going to come from grants, federal, state, whatever? Is that so? That's like that. If that's the equation, then we're talking about roughly $3 million that would come from Cheltenham and Abington, whatever arrangement is made.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Just to clarify, yes, that's correct. That 35% would come from the Cheltenham or Cheltenham-Abington combined, but the 65% would come from the federal government.
Got it. Okay, so there's a $3 million nut here. I'm kind of looking at the budget here too. $3 million nut that would be looked at by Cheltenham as well as Abington in terms of funding that. The other piece to the funding, and that it would be the ongoing maintenance of these three berms, retention basins, et cetera. At what point will we know what that cost is on an ongoing basis? Because that has to be borne by, theoretically, by Abington Township, since it's sitting in Abington Township, unless we work out some kind of agreement to make Cheltenham pay us back for that. Good luck. Or we have to look at raising taxes or doing something to fund this whole thing. Is that accurate?
For the O&M in our cost estimate, we do account for an estimated cost for that. I apologize, I don't have the O&M number with me, but that's part of it. When the project's designed, we develop an operation and maintenance manual. What we feel is the required operation and maintenance with that, and that's turned over to the sponsor. And at that point, there'll be a lot more detail into what that cost is. And then again, the cost is then decided on the non-federal sponsors required, and it's a matter of an agreement between whoever the non-federal sponsors are.
And just for the record, I apologize to anyone who knows this. I don't mean to treat anyone like they're ignorant, but for anyone who doesn't know, O&M is operation and maintenance. Is that okay? Again, just so we're on the same page.
So in terms of ongoing maintenance, that would be things like cutting the grass and all that kind of stuff. So that would fall on Parks and Rec to do that kind of stuff. Is that the maintenance that is
if this were to get to this point and that were the nature of the agreement between Abington and Cheltenham, then that certainly would be one possibility. Mowing the embankment is sort of the generic way to think of it, and other things. But
and at this point, you have do you have any kind of guess what one of these costs to maintain? Like, is it $250,000 a year, or is it like?
I think Commissioner Sanchez has an answer.
Well, this is coming from something someone else sent in the comments, but they had a number, and you gentlemen can verify this, that it was $359,000 a year. And I think that may be for all the.
That's for all 9?
$359,000 per year for 3 of them.
No, for
all basins.
That's for 9 basins. So
all 9 basins of Cheltenham and Abington.
Please hold for a little math.
So you're talking.
Let's use. So about $40,000 a year per embankment, per basin per embankment.
So about $120,000 a year, something, $120,000 to $150,000 a year in ongoing costs to maintain these 3.
Correct. Correct as far as my understanding. Actually, Scott and Eric, is that ballpark pretty close?
And that has to be borne by Abington or be reimbursed by Cheltenham to Abington. But our people would be doing that work, et cetera. We'd have to hire more people, et cetera, to do it.
Well, actually, first, if we could let Scott verify that our understanding of that figure is correct, and then I'll throw out my opinion anyway. But Scott, if you could speak to that.
The 359,000 figure, I'd have to get back to you on that to really verify that. I think that sounds pretty accurate, but I'd have to get with our cost engineer, and I don't want to speak on his behalf. But that sounds like a number that probably came from the feasibility report, and I would have to verify with our cost engineer.
And then, Jim, to your other point, if again, and I want to make this clear because we're talking about proposals. If this were to get all the way to this point where this is something that the board were ready to vote on or ready to evaluate, and part of that would be some sort of agreement drafted with Cheltenham, under the assumption that at that point Cheltenham is still the local lead agency, the local sponsor. One option, and we're really getting far ahead, but one option would be for the Parks and Recreation Department to have the responsibility to maintain the 3 Abington Township located basins. Reimbursement from Cheltenham, having Cheltenham send a private contractor. There are all kinds of things that could hypothetically be worked out. Is that, Manager Lefevre, am I...
Absolutely, and some of these questions that Mr. Marshall has raised, we've discussed internally, and we have the same concerns, and we don't necessarily share confidence that Cheltenham will readily assume that responsibility. So it's something we have to look at internally and how we'll address those costs.
So my understanding of it is, I'm spot on. You're saying I really have such a grasp of this, and you're very proud of me. Okay, great. Could you grab the mic back, Jim?
But let me just say, the $3 million piece, I assume Abington Township is not going to jump in the pool with that one. But that would be like Cheltenham to come up with $3 million to do this project. Is that?
The 35%?
Yeah, the 35%.
That would be on the non.
Wait, Scott, can you grab the mic? I'm sorry. Again, I want to get your answers on the mic.
Yeah, the 35%, I mean, like Eric was saying earlier, there hasn't been an agreement signed for the next phase yet, so it all depends on who signs on to that agreement. If it's Cheltenham alone, it could be Cheltenham and Abington together.
You mean sign on?
What we do after we finish a feasibility study, we sign an agreement called a project partnership agreement, and that outlines the 65-35 cost share in the agreement, where the federal government will pay 65% of the design and construction, and also, the federal government signs that agreement, and then the non-federal sponsor signs the agreement as well, committing to that.
So if we pass this and proceed, if we pass this the commissioners approve this, and we then will give up the land, et cetera, to work on all this stuff, potentially part of the 35% could be coming from Abington. If we otherwise, I mean, if we don't sign on, does that mean the project doesn't get done? I'm not sure what the sign on means. What do we?
It's not a requirement. It's something that has to be worked out on a local level. It's not really something the Corps of Engineers can get involved with. But the 35%, however that percentage is obtained, is worked out at a local level. I mean, I can't speak for Cheltenham, but if they were to assume the full 35%, that's one option. But there could be an option where Cheltenham and Abington share a portion of the 35%, and they could be co-non-federal sponsors, where you could have more than one non-federal sponsor sign an agreement. Or you could have, there's a lot of different options to account for that.
I had one quick comment. 3 of these basins are in Abington. Can the Corps of Engineers, this is a request to the Corps, can you break out the cost of constructing those 3 basins? And it's obvious from some of the presentations here that some of the benefits accrue in Abington Township. So can you construct those benefits within Abington Township, and then also the costs within Abington Township, as well as the operation and maintenance of these 3 basins? Somewhere along the line, these gentlemen are going to have to make decisions in the Planning Commission, and we're also going to have to issue permits, I assume, to you folks. And that kind of information, I think, would be very useful for our making those decisions.
I concur, Mr. Weigel.
So one of the challenges with we recognize that there are benefits to Abington Township of these projects, but we have not cataloged those benefits. We haven't assigned a value to them because our economic modeling only extends into Cheltenham Township as far as economic benefits. So That's a hard question to answer, because if we were to capture and figure out what those benefits are, we would have to probably extend the study and move and extend our model up into our economic model, not our hydrology and hydraulics models. Those already are in that area, but to account for damages reduced in Abington, we would have to revise the economic model, and that would be something that would be done in feasibility.
We can definitely look into that.
Could you give this gentleman the mic, please? Wait, if you could hang on just 1 second until you get the mic, because again, we want everyone to be able to benefit from your question.
Rich Barrett, 1931 Hilltop Road. I must tell you that if you haven't considered the benefits to Abington or the downside, then it just strikes me that your draft is not ready. You haven't done the necessary diligence here in Abington. And with that in mind, I think it's worth asking you, is it not correct that the Army Corps of Engineers still retains discretion to pull back this draft report, as opposed to imposing a deadline of January 22nd for public comment? Particularly if you're not ready, particularly if you haven't done the necessary diligence here in Abington regarding cost, benefit, impact on the environment, how much it's going to cost to take property from people. You haven't gone anywhere near that. And you frankly can send into the community all your hydrologists and everything, but you really haven't done what you're required to do under the statute here. Under 33 USC section 701R, you are given certain discretion which allows you to spend a certain amount of money for a project under $1 million. But in getting that discretion, you're supposed to consult with the public, and you haven't done that with the people in Abington. So with the discretion you have, I would suggest that you're better positioned to pull back the draft report and make sure you have all the data that you need. Thank you.
Okay, a couple things on that. I said earlier, when we do our economic model, we don't account for certain benefits that are within a drainage area that are less than 1.5 miles. Even if we calculate those, we're not allowed to plug them into our model to account for those. Any damage that occur in drainage areas less than 1.5 square miles is assumed to be a local issue and not in the federal interest to account for those. So there are reasons why we don't account for benefits in certain areas. The other part, we recognize that Abington's coming in on the back end of the study. What we didn't really get into earlier today is what went into the front end of this study. We didn't go into the study on day one saying, let's go into Abington and develop basins in Abington for the benefit of Cheltenham. Cheltenham approached us many, many years ago to start working on a feasibility study. And the study was delayed. There was some work that Pennsylvania DEP was working on and other issues. And it was after Irene and Lee that we re-energized the study with Cheltenham. Cheltenham put forward the 50% cost share to match our federal dollars to do the study. We looked at all types of solutions. We looked at underground storage tanks. We looked at levees. We looked at the township wanted bioswales. We looked at rain barrels. We looked at all different types of solutions that were focusing on reducing flood damages in Cheltenham. Going through, and this is what we call our plan formulation process, that we look at different alternatives. We have screening criteria. There's certain criteria we're required to follow. There's other criteria that are set by the objectives of the study. And as we go through that process and we screen certain things out, what we ended up coming at a conclusion was these detention basins. So there was never any, hey, let's have Abington take the burden for Cheltenham on this up front. We screened out a lot of different alternatives and looked at things that didn't even involve Abington at all. We looked at.
Back to my question. I'm asking you.
Wait, sir,
you
I'm
use
sorry.
the microphone,
Again,
please,
if you could.
I had a loud voice.
No, we need to get you on tape. Again, your points are extremely relevant, and people do need to hear them. If you could just give him back the mic for a second. Thanks, Eric.
It's being recorded.
Yeah, this is being recorded, and it's going to be broadcast on the Abington channel.
We can go through a long history of your study. The point I'm making is that you spent a lot of time talking to Cheltenham residents. My God, you can go down to the Cheltenham Township website and look at all the township meetings that you all appeared at and took input from the citizens down there. And I know that they're your non-federal sponsor, and they're paying basically in part for your appearance there. But that goes on for a long time. If you look at the annex to your report, you've gone out into the field, you've interviewed residents, you've given residents in the area an opportunity to answer a questionnaire, and you have some of that data reported in your annex reports. What I'm saying to you is now you're coming to us saying, well, there is an impact in your community, but we don't quite know what it is. And what's apparent to me, and I welcome other people to share it, is you really don't know. And given that you don't know, it would seem to me that you still retain discretion to do the right thing, and that is to pull back your report and then produce a report that's based upon data that's gathered in Abington as well as Cheltenham. So my question to you pointedly is, do you not retain discretion to pull back the report and continue your analysis? Or because of some congressional act, you're dead set, having issued this draft report, you are dead set on the process, that you have to complete your comment period within a certain period of time. It strikes me that that's not what Congress wants you to do under the provisions that allow you to engage the community in these types of projects. So again, my question is, do you not have the discretion to pull back the draft report and do it right?
When the Army Corps evaluates comments, we do have the discretion to say, based on these comments, we're going to do additional analysis. So my recommendation to you is to put that in writing and submit a comment for our consideration.
Would you extend the period beyond January 22nd so that maybe the township can collect people together and get a township view on this?
The question was, since that wasn't in the mic, the question was, would the Army Corps be willing to extend the period beyond January 22nd in order to survey potentially affected Abington residents more similarly to the way Cheltenham residents were surveyed. Is that fair summary?
We do have the ability to extend comment periods beyond the 30 days and beyond the 60 days that have already been allowed.
So will you do that? I'm asking you right now, will you do that? Today, commit to delaying the comment period even longer. It seems so fundamentally fair.
The speaker is asking, again, for the folks watching at home, the speaker is asking if the Army Corps would be willing to commit, I guess on the spot, to further extending the comment period.
I'm not authorized to extend the comment period myself. Okay. So I'm not given that authority within our district. Our district commander is the one that has the ability to extend the comment period. So again, we responded immediately to the request from the township. So if we get a request, it will be considered, and recommendations can be made to our commander to extend that. But I personally do not have the ability on the spot to grant your request.
Joe Madison, 2064 Glenwood Avenue, Glenside, PA, down here next to the park in front of SPS. I've lived here for close to 30 years, and for 21 years of those 30 years, I didn't know it, but when I moved to the house, I had an indoor pool, at least for twice a year. I was very surprised, smiling at the rain and then going down to the basement and finding out I could walk around to my knees with the rain, heavy rain. So you don't have to live on Baderwood Road just to get flooded. In fact, my neighbors in the last 5 or 6 years, they're starting to get water in there. And we're in Abington. We're not in Cheltenham. I have 2 comments before I leave. One is, and it may take me a week, I'm going to write. Remember, I have a point. What is it? I have an opinion. Just like everybody has an opinion, we can talk about it over a drink or a beer, but then it evaporates, just like the beer did. I am going to write to the Army Corps of Engineers, send them my opinion. I'm going to send a copy to Ward 12's commissioner with a short cover letter. And I'm going to send one to my congressman, asking him to intervene. He has to do something down there in Washington besides collect a paycheck, and ask him to intervene so that we can have a year's time. They had 3 years in Cheltenham, a year's time to be surveyed here in Abington from one end to the other and find out whether some other people have flooded backyards, basements, garages, or cars. That was comment number 1. If you don't write, don't blame yourself if they build lakes out here. Don't blame yourself. But I will tell you this. Any politician that gets a letter, he gets a call, he makes a note of it. He gets a letter, it's worth 1,000 calls. So if you don't write, blame yourself. But make Xerox copies and send them to your commissioner and to your congressman. And they'll start a little file on it. And if the file gets big, they'll get a file cabinet drawer. So write, and write often if you have strong feelings for it or against it, or whatever your observations are. So I'm going to do that. I hope some other people do it. Number 2, and maybe this won't be popular here. I have thought for the last 20 years that Abington Township, looking at those pictures going back to the 50s, the 60s, to the 70s, has grown. We are a prosperous, rich township. We have schools, we have hospital expansion, we have houses where in the 1960s there weren't houses. We have roads where there weren't roads. I'll give you the little example. Nothing against Dr. Rao and his veterinary clinic, but it was a nice little veterinary clinic, and 10 years ago he came and said, well, I bought the next property. I'm going to make it a big veterinary clinic, a quarter of a mile from here, and I need 5 times the amount of parking. And he got all the permits. He got every one of the permits. And somewhere in there, they raised the question, what about drainage? What about in heavy rains? What about that flow? Don't worry. We have a storm system. We have storm sewers. We have the runoff. We'll take care of it. And Doctor built a very nice clinic. And somebody else put in a parking lot, and the school district expanded, and the hospital built. What I'm saying is that's an awful lot of concrete and an awful lot of asphalt, and we've become a much more prosperous community. But there was something there. We said we had storm drainage. What we didn't say was in the next sentence, we didn't add that sentence, and we send the water to Cheltenham or to Bader Road. So when we talk about those people that build in Cheltenham and they don't think about it and they grow, just remember, we too have grown and prospered since 1950. Look at some of those maps. And we benefited from it already. So I think we're into this game about flood management and drainage. So I think we ought to seriously consider this, not just because it's in my backyard, but because it's our whole community. But again, whatever your opinion is, write long and often, and copy it to your commissioner so he has a file. Send it to your congressman, because these people are federal employees, and if the congressman wants to know why they won't give Abington another year so that they can get their 2 cents or 55 cents into the comments here, I'm sure the congressman will do that. But you got to write. Thank you.
Many thanks for your comments, Mr. Medicine.
I'm going to be brief and I'm going to be nice. Thank you very much for everything that you did put together, because our ignorance of a lot of things is what's scaring us. So knowledge is good. What I don't want this to turn into is a battle between our township, uphill versus downhill. That would be very much a shame, because we're not here to not get a solution. We're here to get an intelligent solution that will benefit, it will solve the problems, but it won't cause strife and a huge expense, because we all know the maintenance is a real problem. And by the way, we get flooding in our basement too, because there's hills and impervious surfaces and no drainage, so we all do get flooding. We get flooding in our property, but not to the extent that the Baderwood people have experienced. And our son had a car that was flooded. We witnessed all that with you guys, and driving down there and seeing what you experienced, it was really bad. So don't think for 2 seconds that we don't have sympathy for that, because we do. We're hardworking. We don't have silver spoons in our mouths. We are hardworking professional people. So I just wanted to put that out there, because we need to stay friends, and we need to respect each other, and we need to work on this together.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mrs. Bickley.
Good evening. My name is Mike Peters. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Eastburn and Gray. I can't come to a public meeting and not say something, I suppose. I represent a group of individuals on Wooded and Winding Lane. They don't quite have a name yet, but I'm sure the citizens group will have a name as this moves along. I would like to formally request on behalf of my clients that you seriously consider extending the review period. We'll be doing a legal review. We have a great engineer on board, a great environmental engineer on board, and a great stormwater engineer on board, and would appreciate the time to take a close look at this and issue formal comment letters. And for tonight, that's my only comment, because we'll put it in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
Yep.
Hi, Laura Lehman in Meadowbrook, and I have been working with residents in Cheltenham, in Upper Dublin, who get affected from the Sandy Run. So sometimes as we fix our Sandy Run downstream in Upper Dublin, they flood, and as we fix Baderwood and we channelize that water down there, the Cheltenham people flood from that. So that's their concern, and I think the gentleman back there made a very good point about the fact that, what we're trying to do is to spread it out. But there's a huge concern to spread it out when you hear, for instance, people that, that you're spreading a basin near people who are flooding already, and that all of this isn't always rocket science to the extent that we can control all of the features. And there was a meeting, I can't remember how many years back it was, but having worked with the flooding for so long, I remember I found it frightening to listen to, where they were talking about building a basin. It was right here in this room. They were talking about building a basin where one basin was kind of full. They were talking about building another and transporting the water over to that basin. So one of the concerns is obviously also, as was mentioned before, are we doing this and then allowing more development when development is, as was said, a huge part of the problem? And how are we paying attention to that, where we are building the drainage tanks that now go off the property somewhere else, and we say we're improving the drainage, as someone just mentioned. It doesn't improve the drainage except for that particular property. Somebody else will get that water. And Cheltenham's getting Abington's water, and it's very, very fair for us to take part in this, because the benefits that Cheltenham is receiving come from damages that Abington did. And that needs to be recognized. So I think people are beginning to recognize some of that. But, and these conversations will allow for that recognition. But by the same token, nobody who is in a home who may already be endangered wants to see something built in their backyard that we may have trouble controlling, and they may end up with more damage. So what we need to do as a community is begin to have talks about the development, about the solutions for the development, and where it can be done where people are not endangered. You can see how close this is to houses. And so this may not be the right solution. So we need to all, as a community, do that. The zoning rewrites that we're poised to release, I wish everybody in this room would become aware of what's in them and how it's going to affect our community. that when we first, in Cheltenham, when I was working with the residents there, when we first started adding up, and we got to our first 100 million of cost for all these flooding damages that are requiring things like these basins, we were astounded. But very shortly afterwards, we added up another 100 million. So it is huge, and we all, as community members, need to pay attention to those things, the zoning and all of that part that's being added, that's adding to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Khaki Evans. I live at 1132 Lindsay Lane. I have a couple questions for you. I think you had said that you had looked at some green infrastructure solutions, where you talked about bioswales. Could you, our Environmental Advisory Council is going to look at that, and I'm sure our Shade Tree Commission. Could you give us the results of the studies so that we can help make an informed decision? Could you share that information, or has that information been shared yet?
Is the mic still floating around there? Okay, cool.
Yeah, some of the modeling that we had worked on, with the initial screening, we looked at changing infiltration rates and looked at what green infrastructure would do. There was even one analysis where we modeled rain barrels on the four corners of every structure. So we do have that modeling available, and we can share that.
That's great. So how soon could you get that to us?
I'll have to ask the...
Okay. So I think, Commissioner Spiegelman, you asked a question about that the township also has to weigh in with comments?
Yes.
Okay.
The way to work, again, and I stress, if this plan even moves forward, if this plan moves forward to the point where eventually Cheltenham, with presentations and evidence and engineering schematics from the Army Corps of Engineers, comes to us asking for permission to create the basins by physically building the embankments and making any other changes, taking down certain trees and invasives and whatnot. At that point, that is a matter that would come before our Township Planning Commission as everything does, so that we can be advised appropriately. The EAC and the Environmental Advisory Council and the Shade Tree Commission would weigh in, as with all similar matters. And then eventually it would culminate in a public hearing before the entire Board of Commissioners, where residents there would be the full presentation of what, again, at that point would obviously be a final engineering schematics, and there would be obviously full vetting and discussion of who would pay for what. Any interested neighbors and folks from the public in general would be able to come out and make comments, and the input from Shade Tree and from EAC, as well as whatever report we receive from the Planning Commission, would be entered into the hearing.
Right, I understand that. Does the township itself, though, the township can weigh in before January 22nd, correct? And give comments, and we'll be giving comments. So in our assessment, if we felt we needed more time or looking at the data that we're going to get, we'll let you know. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
April Haladzik, 792 Woodard Road. Just in terms of Rich Barrett's point, you had said that you don't have the authority, that Abington Township would need to ask for an extension. I'm asking you if you will be making that recommendation for a significant extension.
I think it's safe to say, Mr. Manager, you're the one who officially proffers such a request, but I think...
We already asked for one 30-day extension. The Corps of Engineers was very receptive to that. I can't speak to the whole board, but I know the commissioners involved this evening will probably ask for additional time. How much, I'm not sure at this point, but I suspect that will be one of the comments the township makes prior to January 22nd.
Okay, so you will have a meeting among all of you to make the determination of what that extension will look like, and how will that be communicated back to us?
That will be, well, we have...
Process-wise, how does it work?
Okay, so process-wise, I think, pipe in if I'm answering just totally extemporaneously here, but the way to work is we will. I mean, in theory, we could decide off the cuff. Some period.
Well, Cheltenham has had 3 years. So, what will be your recommendation to the board?
Well, obviously, we need a significantly more time. I don't know that we'd be able to ask for 3 years, but I don't know. Input, Mr. Manager. It's a little bit on the spot.
I mean, one point we need to clarify is Cheltenham hasn't had this information for 3 years. They've been working on the development and undertaking the study for a number of years.
Okay.
They've had basically, I guess, the same 30-day review period that was offered to us by the extension to the end of January. But based on the comments tonight, we can correlate those and pass those on formally to the Corps and ask for additional time. But I think informally we can meet and we can come to a number. But I would encourage everyone here in the interim to offer their comments as well, and also to ask for that same extension. The more people that do ask for that time extension, I think will have a greater impact on the Corps. Not to put the representatives on the spot.
Alrighty.
I mean, I think and he can correct me if I was wrong, but I think what Mr. Barrett was suggesting with the extension was a time to evaluate exactly how it impacted Abington,
right,
and when that information, was available too. So, I mean, not to put it in an open-ended thing, but perhaps the comment to the Army Corps could be phrased in that way. If we get that granular breakdown that we need of how it benefits Abington, impacts Abington, then we can make a decision from that as to how long we need to comment. And exactly. I just might also suggest, this was another sort of related comment that came up with this. In your report, you have alternatives, but I would suggest, and if this comes to fruition, maybe have alternatives that just left Abington out of it. And I mean that as just a practical way. So, you could still have your alternative that had Abington in it, but then the next menu option would be just something that didn't have it, and then the cost benefits could be weighed of each of those. Thank you.
And one other point, if I could make, there's no guarantee at this point that this process will extend to the next level. No one from Cheltenham Township has approached anyone from Abington formally or informally about participating in any cost sharing or any maintenance or any other financial commitment to this project. So there has been no dialogue in that direction. And I can't speak to Cheltenham's finances, but I know they're certainly not a wealthy community. I know there's limited resources there. So I don't know if they're in a position to fund their share of the next phase, and they certainly haven't approached us yet. So I don't want anyone to leave this room with the impression that there's been a dialogue between the communities and we're working jointly in addressing that cost. That hasn't occurred, nor have been approached. In fact, prior to the Corps' meeting with Cheltenham last month, we weren't even aware of the meeting until a day or two before, when one of the elected officials from Cheltenham approached Commissioner Sanchez and informed us of the meeting. So there's been no contact up until this evening.
Thank you very much, Manager Lefevre, for that clarification. Jim, do you grab the mic?
Yeah, maybe what we should do is suggest to the Corps of Engineers that a time period, like a year or two, in order to do the kind of analysis in Abington that has been done already in Cheltenham. And I think that's what we're really talking about here that hasn't happened. Not extend the comment period. That's like, for 90 days, let's go to them and say, hey, you really haven't done an analysis like you did in Cheltenham. How long? Put it together a task plan, et cetera, and that's got to be at least, that's a full development of a different time period, 2018.
Well, we wouldn't be talking about simply just extending the comment period. Although, again, to reiterate what we've said a number of times, it is very important that the comments that everyone has, based on the information that we all have, and then I think we're all on the same page, definitely get those comments in by January 22nd. But that said, that will request and not an extension of the comment period, but additional study on the impact in the township. If only because, as the Corps made clear, and I know this is a principle that they respect, they cannot by law create flooding problems or any kind of problems where problems did not previously exist. And I think that this is part of that. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Township Engineer Powers, please.
I wasn't going to speak, but what was the cost of the feasibility study for Cheltenham? You did the feasibility study, and what was that cost?
The total cost of the study was $845,000. $745,000 of it was cost shared, so half of that was Cheltenham.
So you've done some of it in Abington. Is there a way to come with a cost that if you do Abington and Cheltenham together, I can guarantee you'll outweigh your cost benefits about helping Abington and Cheltenham with this deal. And if you're providing 65% of the cost, the board might look at it a favorable condition. Then if you look at both townships together and you look at the flooding in Abington as well as, I could guarantee you we can cut half of the flow in Abington that goes to Cheltenham by doing different things besides these basins. I've looked at it 100 different ways. And I know if we go up to the school district, we do underground storage up there. We go on Keswick Avenue, we do underground storage on the school district's properties there. We can cut down the flows at least half, and then the Tokenie Basin also goes up to the McKinley section. We can cut down those flows, not only helping just Abington, but Cheltenham, but that cost-benefit ratio will increase. You're talking $100 million, you're talking $500 million to $1 billion that you can save in money and flooding in both the townships if you do them both together and look at the watershed as a whole, not as something that's piecemealed right now.
All right. Are there any, before we sort of wrap up, and we'll wrap up with okay, where are we now and what's next? Are there any other additional comments from anybody? Commissioner Sanchez?
I did want to underscore your point that people should get comments in just in case. I mean, let's get the comments that we have. I know a lot of you have sent them. You're formulating them. I have another one. I wanted to, thank you to everybody here, of course, but also got one from one of your neighbors on Hemlock Circle, and Ethan Simon. This is an extensive list. He submitted this to the Corps, so you gentlemen have that. I think he emailed it in, pictures, everything, and as pictures are worth 1,000 words, of course. So this will help even as a stopgap measure in between. So please get those in, and we will do the same. I'll certainly collect any and pass them along too if need be.
Yes, again, I'll reiterate. Please get your comments in, and if you feel, and I think it's safe to say there are many folks in the room who feel strongly that there should be additional study that focuses on the effects, positive and negative, within Abington Township of the presence of these three proposed basins. Make that clear in your comments as well. In addition to everything else, if that is something that you feel, and again, I think a lot of people do, make that clear that you as a resident are requesting additional study that focuses on the Abington effects, positive and negative. All right. Just to remind everybody, if there's anyone who didn't sign in, because I think we're gonna be following up with emails. I think there are probably a lot of folks who are on some combination of all of our email newsletter lists, but certainly we're gonna be following up with everybody here as we move forward as official requests are made. So there is a clipboard up by the podium. And yes, and I very, very much want to thank the guys from the Army Corps of Engineers. I know, obviously, this was a lot thrown at you. We really do sincerely appreciate your time and all of your answers and all the future work and all the hoops we're going to probably make you jump through moving forward. It is legitimately appreciated. And of course, everyone here, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for waiting patiently. I really thought the tone of comments was really very collaborative and very respectful. And I know that means a lot to us as commissioners. So thank you. And with that, if there's anyone who wants the physical mailing address or who may have missed the email address for comments, you can please see me right now. I have it right here. And actually, if Steve puts up, there was, kind of, sort of. So, okay, so there's the email address. I have the physical address here in my newsletter. You can come up and see me. And I just want to thank everybody else for coming out tonight. Thank you all.